Hello and welcome to our lesson on quadratics, factoring with numbers and variables, part 2, a more advanced look. If you remember in part 1, we left off on step 4. We had found the factors that worked, and now for step 5, we're going to take the factors that work, and they were -1 and -10, and we're going to list them as a binomial. Binomial, if you remember, are the two sets of parentheses. It has the variable in it, and the variable is x. And then it has the factors that we found. We found -1 and -10. So we write -1 and -10. And that still equals 0 because we're working on this. That's all you have to do on part 5. You just take the factors that worked, which were -1 and -10, and put them inside a binomial. Now in step 6, you're going to divide each factor in the binomial by a. Remember, a was 2. So our factors of -1 and -10 get divided by the number 2. That's it for step 6. On step 7, you're going to reduce any of the fractions if possible. 1/2 is as far as it can be reduced. 10/2, however, is not fully reduced. So let's rewrite. It's 3 times, remember we got the 3 because in step 1 we factored that 3 out. 3 times x minus 1/2, because that's fully reduced fraction. And then we're multiplying that by x minus 10 divided by 2 can be reduced to 5. And that equals 0. That's step 7. Just reduce any fractions if you can. Step 8 is move those denominators to the coefficient position. So the denominator of 2 gets moved up in front of the x to become the coefficient for x. The 1 from 10 divided by 2 gets moved up in front of the x. The denominators move to the front of the x's, to the coefficient position. So it should look like 3 times the 2 from the denominator moved up, minus 1, and the 1 from the denominator moved up, minus 5. And right here, when you have a 1, you usually don't write it. But in this case, I want to show you how it moved. But remember, once you have a 1 as a coefficient, you don't have to write it anymore. The last thing you have to do is make sure that you distribute out the 3 that you factored out in the beginning. Any factors that you took out in step 1 need to be distributed back into your answer. 3 is directly touching the 2x minus 1, so that's the only distribution that you need to do. It's not going to be distributed to the second binomial. It will not go 3 times x minus 5 because it's not touching. So 3 times 2x minus 1. So 3 times 2 is 6x, and then 3 times -1 is -3. And then you recopy the rest of your answer. We found our factors. We took this quadratic right here and factored it down to our answers. It turns out that if we take 6x minus 3 and you multiply it by x minus 5, it should equal 0. Those would be the factors. But wait. You always have to double check your answer. Double check it by using the FOIL method. If when we FOIL this out, it equals the quadratic that we started with, we know our answer is dead on correct. So let's FOIL. You remember FOIL stands for first, so you're taking your first term times your first term. So you're doing 6x, multiplying it by x. And remember, when you multiply exponents, you really add them. So that's 6x, and you have 2 of them. Now you're going to take O, which is the outside, so you take 6 times the outside number. You're going to take 6x times -5. Notice I take the sign with it, and that's -30x. I stands for inside, so now you're going to distribute the -3 to the x, the 2 inside terms. Again, take the sign with it. -3 times x is going to give you -3x. And then your last term is when you take -3 times -5. And if you multiply 2 negatives together, you get a positive, so it's 15. Put all of the terms together into one line. So you have 6x squared minus 30x minus 3x plus 15. Notice something? Your O and your I terms right here, they're like terms, so we can combine them. So it turns into 6x squared minus 33x plus 15. And that should equal 0. because this is what it said there. This was the original quadratic that we started with. That was what we were trying to find the factors of. Since this right here matched our original quadratic, that means our factors of 6x minus 3 times x minus 5 are the correct factors of the quadratic. As a quick review, all the 8 steps that we did, part 1 and part 2, put the factors into binomials on the parts here, divide the numbers in the binomial by the a value, reduce the fractions if you can, move the denominator to the coefficient position, so we took that 2 and we moved it to 2x, and we took the 1 and we moved it up to 1x. Remember, you have to distribute any factors, like the 3, that we took out in the beginning of the problem. And always go back and double check your answer with FOIL. That ensures you have a correct answer every single time. It's like having the answer key right in front of you. And that's it for our lesson on quadratics, factoring with numbers and variables, part 2, a more advanced look.